that the public don't want or didn't care for, and it's all based on this idea that, well, you voted your representation in and they're serving your goods. It's like, but they don't.
Right.
They don't serve what we want. They get the job and then they do what they want, and people just keep falling for that. Champion the one issue to last year. People fall for it election after election after election, and I think part of it's because they just don't know who the other choice would be.
Right.
But so I wish I had a magical answer for it all on how to clean it up. I really don't think it's ever going to get cleaned up unless we somehow get the power back to the people, and enough of those people, the citizens of America, show an interest in having their vote, having their say, and
right.
Paying a little more attention. And I think there is a section that would, if we had the ability.
Right. And that's how we're going to reform campaign finance.
Well, it does actually, it does tie in because, like you said, it just keeps going back into the kind of the corruption of it all. People don't have a vote. The control really is in the corporations.
Yep.
There was a for anyone that it's only my second time, so other people don't know it. I'm a huge movie lover, whatever that says about me. But I just love movies, and I just paying attention to some of that stuff. There was a script that was bought by one of the Hollywood studios years ago, and I just always remembered it because I thought it was a good idea. And the idea basically was that in the future, there are no more governments. There's just big corporations.
Right.
And I was just telling somebody, I said, well, it's really not that far off. I said, because when you really think about it, people are like, oh, no, there would always be government. I said, but the corporations do run things. They run things through the government and through the politicians. Politicians, to me, they're essentially middlemen for what the super rich want.
Right.
They're middlemen for the big corporations that put them in charge. They put them there, and now they're going to do what they want. And so they're kind of they're the bridge between the people and the corporations. Like, we need those right now because they're going to convince you guys that it's for your good, or that we have to, or that this is necessary, or that this is somehow going to benefit you. And so then even like, remember when companies used to lay off thousands of people, and they would make up how it was so necessary for them to do it to survive.
Right. Sure.
Have you noticed companies using that they have to do it for survival as often?
No.
I'll give you an example. Are you familiar with Circuit City?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Circuit City, when they laid off, going back a few years, they laid off of something like 2,500 to 3,000 people, and they didn't even try to hide the reason. They didn't try to say it was. They just said, we're letting all these people go, and then they can come back in 2 months and apply for their job at our new lower pay rate.
Right. Sure.
Basically, we just don't want to pay as much anymore. So, but the only way we can get out of it is by letting these people go.
Yeah.
Restructuring, and I'm just like, oh my! And at that point, I was just like, oh wow! It's like they're not even trying to hide it anymore. Mm-hmm. And the danger is that when corporations, I think, are just getting so comfortable that they can just do what they want when they want, that essentially they don't even feel they have to hide it anymore. Like, yeah, this is just what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're going to let people go.
Well, and
we don't even need to give you a reason. That's just what we do. We're a corporation.
Right.
And so I always say, like, when corporations start getting more and more comfortable doing that, now let's take that little leap. Like, well, at some point, is it really that far-fetched to say at some point they'd be like, well, what do we need these middlemen for anymore?
Mm-hmm.
We pretty much do what we want. The public knows we're doing what we want. Why do we need these politicians anymore? Because we don't need them.
Sure. No,
so that's why that script always caught my attention.
And I agree with you. I agree with you, man. And I mean, truthfully, the reason they're getting more brazen now is because the politicians have done their job at eroding the middle class. Because they couldn't do that in the past because there was always a middle class to prop up those employees. But now with the middle class decaying, the small business guys just, going out of business by leaps and bounds, they have to, the corporations have more control now. They have more power because it's not like there's another job you can jump into. So a good employee at Circuit City has to take that pay cut to come back because it isn't like they can go work at Bob's hardware store or Bob's Electronics, and be a star there anymore. They just have to suck it up and take it.
Yeah, exactly. And when people, when you kind of what you were just talking about with the power that the corporations have, I used to say, when these corporations they'll lay off. Uh, I'm going back now some years where the job market was very, very good.
Hmm.
And I remember they used to say, like a lot of people were kind of writing their own checks. Like corporations were trying to compete for, the job pool that was out there. To get good employees, they had to pay very well, and they were all complaining about how high salaries and stuff were getting. And I remember, somebody made a move, and I said, yeah, I go, if you want to get a well-paying job, you better make it move soon. And they're like, why? I said, because they're not going to let this continue. And they were like, who's they? I said, corporate America. And they're like, oh, so some sort of conspiracy? I said, it doesn't have to be a conspiracy. It doesn't have to be like a sit down with all these corporate heads, saying this is what we're going to do. Rich people think differently than working class people.
Sure.
And honestly, and a lot of people don't get that they don't look at money and stuff the same way that working class people do. They actually think differently about it.
Right.
And they see that their cost is going up, and I'm just like, so here you are, a lot of people, regardless of what they're making, they're out spending everything.
Mm-hmm.
They're living paycheck to paycheck, whether they're making, $80,000 a year or $30,000 a year. They make that leap, they just start buying more stuff.
Right.
And I'm like, so you got this whole section of the public that's always going to need a job. So these big corporations know, like, okay, I said, and I told them this is how to go. Some corporation will let thousands of employees go. Mm-hmm. Then another corporation will do it, and when the second corporation do it, they're going to say, they need to, and they'll reference the first one.
Right.
And then the news will grab it, whether it's a true or not. The news will start grabbing it and talking about how the economics are switching and job markets are bad. Things are bad out there.
Right.
And as soon as things are bad out there, gets out there, well, now it opens the door for all the corporations to start making all these cutbacks, this and that. Mm-hmm. So now you reach this point where, and I said, and they'll just let people go. I said because they know that the super rich, they can wait out longer than you can. Even if somebody's, well, they'll be losing money or those. I said, but they're not thinking short term.
No, not at all.
They're not living paycheck to paycheck. They're not worried. They are looking at things from the longer view perspective.
Yeah.
And they know if they get things under control, it's much better for them over the next 10 years than it is right now. And a lot of people just think like, I think a lot of, working class people, they have that more short-term view. How's it affecting me now?
Right. Well, working class people, they work under the false assumption that business owners, and I'll talk small business through large business, that business owners in general are looking to do fair business, and that's just a crock.
Oh, yeah.
That's just a crock.
Yeah. I hear that all the time where you hear comments people make, and you're like, you actually think this corporation cares about you?
Dude, every corporation.
It's like I could do a whole nother show on the things that corporate America has been doing.
Right.
To basically, I'll just touch on one real briefly. I had when they take people, you're getting paid hourly, and all of a sudden, well, now they want to get you on salary. And some people think like that's some sort of perk, and it's like, well, you're no longer, and part of what they do is you're no longer, a garbage man. You're a sanitation technician.
Right.
You're a professional.
Right.
So now we're going to put you on salary. And so they give out fancy titles and that. And I had a friend. He was working in the IT realms. He was working in computers.
Okay.
For a big corporation, but he was getting hourly, even though it was a full-time job and that. And then he was all happy. He said, yeah, he goes, they're putting us on salary. I said, why are you happy about this?
Yeah, really?
I said, this is bad. And he goes, no. He goes, it's good. He goes, like, we get, guaranteed our salary. And I said, right, but you get your hours as it is right now anyways. He's like, yeah. He goes, you won't get overtime. He's like, no, we get salary plus overtime. And I'm like, yeah, this is the transition. And for anybody who hasn't gone through it yet, this is what they're going to do.
Right.
If you're out there listening, this is what they're going to do. You're hourly. They want to get you on salary, but they know that you're not going to, especially if you're collecting overtime and you're getting enough hours, they know you're not going to want all of a sudden hear that you're only going to get paid for your 40.
Right.
So what they're going to do is they're going to put you through the transition period. They're going to give you salary plus overtime.
Right.
And you're going to get that for a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and then they're going to yank out the overtime.
Yeah, then they'll say, well, because of budget constraints, blah, blah, blah.
Right, because at that point, it's no longer required to be overtime because you're salary.
Right.
And so it's a transition period to get you used to, being on salary and that you didn't see the step coming, and that's exactly what happened. I told them that's what they're going to do to you. I swear to God. This is a true story. It was about a year and a half, 2 years later, he comes back and he started complaining, and he's like, oh yeah, now they're cutting out our overtime thing because times are tough. I go, I told you it's going to happen. He's like, well, no, they're saying it's not because they're just doing that. They're saying it's because, things are getting tough. I'm like, well, they're going to say whatever they got to say to do it. The point is, they were always going to do it.
Yeah, they're not going to tell you that they're raping you. They're just going to do it.
Yeah, and so now they pulled away your overtime, and guess what? Now you're pure salary. And guess what they're going to do? Oh, now you just they'll work you as many hours as they want because they just have to pay you your salary. Mm-hmm. You don't get overtime now.
Yeah.
And they keep moving more and more people over there. So the days of where salary used to be actually a fringe benefit. It used to be, you're a professional, you get your job done. So if you need to go to the doctor, we're not going to dock you. We just expect you to get your work done and to be a professional. That's kind of what salary was originally about. So the benefit used to be like, you weren't having to sit there and punch in a clock card every day and track your hours. Well, now it's gone to where it's totally a corporate advantage now because they put people on salary and then they work them to death. And once you're on salary, it's like they don't care if they put you through 60 hours. What do they care? And then when they let all those other people go, guess what? Well, things are tough out there. So now you're working longer and harder, and we're not even going to give you raises.
Yeah, and then we're going to give you a 25% pay cut because we got to. We have to keep things going.
Yeah. And then what always amazes me is that kind of the whole way it works in conjunction with the market is a company lays thousands of people off. And instead of you saying, like, well, wait a minute, this company's not doing so well, it had to lay all these people off. It's obviously not doing as well as it was. But what happens? Just the news that they've let, 4,000 or 5,000 people go, the stock price goes up.
Yeah. So they made more money.
Oh, they're making cuts. They're letting people go. Oh, now the stock goes up.
Right.
So it's like, whenever somebody, if let's say they're, about to make a move and they want that stock price up, well, one of the ways they do it, they let a lot of people go.
Right.
If somebody wants to cash out, so you got there. And then I always say this is why CEOs get paid so much money is at most big corporations, you have a very small group of people that own the majority of those stocks.
Right, sure.
You got a few billionaires that own a majority share between them. So wouldn't you be willing to pay somebody $25 million, if he's going to make the moves that allow you to cash out for hundreds of millions of dollars?
Of course, simple math.
So you give him a piece, he makes the moves that you need to have done. You get out, you cash out, you sell your stocks, you do whatever, but you rape the company, you strip it, whatever you do, and people and the jobs, it never comes into play with these people. It's just all about the money.
Right, exactly. It's big finance, my friend, big finance.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, dude, we have been rambling and rambling. I say we call it. What do you say?
Yeah. That was a long show this time.
It's all good, though. All right. Well, as you all know, go and check out the website, aldanews.com, ALLDANEWS.com. Actually, we did it this week, made it look a little more stripped down, a little easier to maneuver. So go over there, check it out. And Tom and I will be back next week, and we'll start next week's show by saying a topic, and then we will proceed to not talk about it at all.
We'll talk about it shortly, and then we'll get to something else.
Yeah, we'll give it 2 minutes before we go into whatever the hell we really want to talk about. So,
is it our fault that everything's linked to everything else?
No, definitely not.
Sure seems that way.
All right, man. Well, let's get out of here. We will see you guys next week. That's it. See ya.